All right. Good evening, Cross Church family and friends. Welcome to Deep Dive, our sermon series review that we do every month, the last Wednesday of the month. And this is our second episode, so very excited to be here and to again dive into our most newest sermon series. Again, before we get started, just want you to do something real quick. If you're online right now, go ahead and hit that share button, so those that are connected with you can also have an opportunity to see this as well. If it's your first time joining with us on Deep Dive, I'm Pastor Vincent, and they also call me PV, and I'm proud pastor of Cross Church in Denton, Texas, and so we're excited. So got a group around the table who's going to help us with this discussion tonight, and as we dive deep, what we want you to do is if you have any questions, comments, anything that you want to share as we go through this process, go ahead and put it in the comments, and then our social media team will make sure that they get it to us because we want to hear from you. We're going to go into discussion, but we want to know what you think and kind of the questions that you have as well. So with that being said, we'll kind of go around the table and introduce everybody, or let everyone introduce themselves, starting with my right.
Hi, I'm Joy.
Hi, Joy.
So joyful to be here tonight with each and every one of you.
Awesome. I'm TJ. I'm the growth pastor here at Cross Church and super pumped to be at the table.
I am Carly Pancake, and I'm TJ's wife, and that's it.
I'm Demarion.
What's up, Demarion?
There are no special facts to share at this time.
There's always special facts, and we're all just more than just our names. That's right. That's right. Even though you have a cool name like Pancake. That's right. So thank you guys for joining me tonight and then joining us around the table. So if you're wondering, last month, we weren't sitting around the table. We were kind of comfy on couches. This month, we're sitting around the table, and that has a lot to do with the sermon series. So if you haven't been following us, we're in the series entitled The Table, or At the Table, and we kicked it off just 3 weeks, so we're actually 3 weeks into this series. And we still have, I believe, 4 more weeks to go. So we'll be talking about this series in this deep dive, as well as the November deep dive. So just to kind of give you an overview, this series really is about the table being a metaphor for the church. And each chair around the table represents a different connection or different person within the body of Christ. So chair 1, we have the chair that's for the new, the guest, the invited person, the non-believer, the person who's coming to the table, maybe for the first time, maybe they've been coming for a while, but they haven't really connected to the body. Chair 2 is the new believer, those that have now come into the faith and are now connected with the church. And then we have the mature, growing believer in chair 3, and then chair 4, we have the Christ-centered believer, even though we have 5 chairs here. We have the maturing, growing, and then we get to the last chair, which is the Christ-centered person. And so each one of those chairs represents different places in our relationship and our walk with Jesus Christ. So it's been a very interesting and very exciting series. As I jump into this tonight, just kind of for the group that's here, one of the things I thought about with this particular series is it's a little bit different than, most series, in that a lot of times, sermon series are really focused on a topic that's kind of its application, right? It's like, how can I be a better Christian? Or maybe it's a specific area in my faith or walk that I need to get better at. And this series really is kind of like the core fundamental of, what is the church? What is the church about? And what does it mean to be a part of the church, and how to become a part of that church? And I think to me, that's a little more challenging, for people sometimes. I don't know. Maybe I think it's great, but other people could be like, "Oh, this is boring, PV," But I think it's kind of one of those things where sometimes we don't really talk a lot or spend a lot of time really talking about what does it mean to be a part of the church. Anybody have thoughts on that? Like, do you agree, disagree?
I do agree, and I really think it depends on, a lot of the time, it depends on your background and how you view what being a part of the church means. But I think, really there is only one true meaning, and when you're a part of the body, the Bible talks about how the body has several different members of the body, and they all look different, they all have different functions, but it takes each and every part of the body to work together in order for the body to function properly. So that's my take on it.
Anybody else? I mean, because when I think about it from the standpoint of, sometimes it's like we know that we're a part of the church and we kind of get that, but but do we really understand what that means? And so I think that maybe that might be difficult for some people, or maybe some people haven't thought about it that way.
Some people think just going to church, I'm a part.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, I think it's helpful too because I think this series in particular invites a lot of self-examination because it's kind of like where am I at the table? Which seat am I in? And obviously the goal is to get to Christ-centered. And so it kind of helps us because I think even what you were saying, Joy, is sometimes we can get stuck in a place where it's just this. Being a part of the church is just going to church, or even being a part of the church is just serving. But there's always more. There's always up farther that we can go. So it helps us to examine where am I at and how can I get closer to Jesus. So yeah.
That's a good point. And to your point, I mean, that's to me what's uncomfortable about this series is that self-examination part of, you know what, I've been coming, but am I really still just a chair one person? Do I really have a relationship with Jesus Christ? And maybe I've been coming, maybe I'm saved, and maybe I've been saved for a long time, but I have to admit that I'm really still just a new believer. As far as my walk is concerned, I really can't necessarily quantify myself as a mature believer. And I think that that's hard. And I think one of the challenges, and we'll go through that, that really, even for myself, that I had to take in was filling the empty seat. Who am I inviting to come to church? Who do I know in my life that's unsaved? Because a lot of times birds of a feather flock together, and we're kind of only around church people or people that go to church, and it's but I mean, basically we're inviting each other. You're don't go to your church, come to my church, right? Versus finding people who don't go to church at all and saying, hey, come have an experience with Jesus. Do anybody struggle with that or had thought about that?
I would say I agree with you there that we can often get, I guess, caught in that rut. And to both of your points, you do have to examine yourself. And I remember in our group that we had this week, sometimes we have to, when we do take that examination, we look at ourselves, it's why am I not inviting people to church? And then how can I get to a better place through I believe we said prayer. It's do I even have a heart to even want to get to that point? And even then, it's I've got to pray about that too. And so a lot of our group discussion was about the need for prayer, for God to even put the desire in me to want to really go out there and do the work, as opposed to I'm here Sunday, I'll see you guys Wednesday, and I'll be back Sunday. And, we're passing by all these strangers throughout the week, and we should invite them. But because of where we may be or where our heart is, it's no, I don't think I'm quite ready to extend that invitation yet. So.
Yeah, my daughter is currently reading Through Gates of Splendor by Elizabeth Elliot about their trip to the Alcas and reaching those people that had never heard about Jesus before. And so we were listening to it in the car, and I was really convicted about just like how passionate they were about sharing Christ with these people who had never heard it before. And it was kind of a renewed like, oh yeah, this is like a thing that people really need, and that we can share. And I think there's like been a stigma in Christian culture against inviting people to church. Like that's kind of weird. And people like have their own beliefs, so don't push your opinions on them. Or and even within the church, I think we kind of have said like, nah, don't really invite people to church. Like, do this, and this, but not really. And so not that you have to only invite people to church. You can do it a lot of different ways. But I think just kind of getting past that, the mountain of feeling like it's weird to ask people, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
So how do we get past that? Because I think that is true, and I think that's most people's struggle. Like, I want to ask them, but I don't want them to think I'm weird. Or, I want to ask them, but it just feels awkward. Yeah. So, I think sometimes it really is just building a relationship with somebody first. And I think that goes back to what you were talking about on Sunday as far as how you live. Because if you're trying to build a relationship with somebody with the intention of inviting them to church, but your lifestyle is not reflecting that of a Christian, and then you do invite them, I think it's important for us to be careful of what our witness looks like, so that when we get to that point, our lives are mirroring what Christ would want us to, how he wants us to live out our life.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think, it's like my question kind of is, where did we lose the boldness? Like throughout the history of church, starting with the day of Pentecost. I mean, the Holy Spirit came and they ran out there and they didn't care. You know what I mean? They didn't care. They were going to preach it. They were on fire. They were bold. Even after, Peter and James and John were arrested and, told not to preach again, they just went back out and started preaching it again, And it's like we're over time, that boldness is kind of just trickled and kind of dissipated. And I think that's kind of that, we have the same gift of the Holy Spirit. It's kind of like we have to take it upon ourselves to kind of recapture that boldness to say, hey, you know what? They thought they were crazy, for sure, back then. Way crazier than probably people think we are now, right? And, they endured all kind of stuff. If they can do it, I can. And you know what? Maybe, some people might think I'm crazy. But I'd rather be considered crazy for Jesus than crazy for a lot of other things that people are considered crazy for. You know what I mean?
I think it has to do with our culture and living in the U.S. If you go visit anywhere really outside of the U.S., you can see the difference in passion for the church. But here, we are so spoiled with our lifestyle and really acquiring, we really don't, it's not even really a materialistic thing. I just think we have lost what God truly intended for us to rely on him for everything, and we relied on ourselves.
Well, we can just run Facebook ads. That's how we invite. I mean, and hey, we do.
Let's not
hey,
get started.
Hey, we do it, and it has worked for us, in the past. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I think that's part of that kind of culture thing. Is like, oh, we don't have to do that. We don't have to go out and actually talk to people. We'll just.
That's true.
And I think it's more of that church culture today is like we just believe they'll just come, right? It's like
build it and they come.
Yeah, build it and they'll come, right? It's like they'll just show up,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like when we do that, like what you were kind of saying at the beginning, is that we end up the people who are going to respond to that are the people who are already going to church somewhere else. Right. And so I think it is like this, that we have to go out of our way to say like, no, we want to intentionally reach people who don't yet know Jesus. And I think really, like I think Joy said, like it's about first and foremost a relationship, that we need to have relationships with people who don't know Jesus, and then we need to build that and cultivate that. And as we kind of live out our faith and talk about our faith, then it becomes a little bit easier in some sense to invite them, because they know every Sunday you're at church. They know you've got your church events, and so it just becomes a little bit easier just to say, hey, do you want to come do this thing with me that they already know about because you're talking about it all the time. I think it's easy too for us to like kind of be stealth Christians, where it's just like I'm a Christian, but like I don't really talk about it at work, and so nobody really, but I think for us to have that truly on display in the way that we talk, in the way that we act all the time, in all of our relationships, I think gives us a good like first step toward doing that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So, and to your point about being stealth Christians, because I've heard this before, not just being afraid to share or invite people, but it's I've heard people say, well, you know what? I don't want to invite. Church is like my safe place. It's like my haven, my getaway. So I don't want the people that I work with or the people in my neighborhood or heck, even people in my family or whatever following me to church, because, this is my safe place. This is where I want to get away from all of those people.
Yeah.
Has anybody else heard that before?
No, yeah.
Yes.
Guilty.
Stephanie said
Guilty of a few of those.
people hush when you enter the room. It's like, oh, there's the church girl. I'm like, shh.
And why are we scared of that? I think sometimes how I always see it is our fear sometimes of losing relationships because we stand up for our faith. Actually, if we did, we probably would gain more relationships and a greater level of faith. A greater level of respect. I think along the way, what people don't like is what were the hypocritical Bible thumpers who would come in there and tell you everything you're doing is wrong while they were doing all things that were wrong too, right? Yeah. And I think we've heard that so long that we're like, oh, okay, well, we don't want to offend anybody, we want to do anything. But I think people might be receptive and maybe we haven't given it a shot.
Yeah, I think like what you said, and I think your first sermon was talking about just like the smell of the bread. And I think that sometimes we make it too much about ourselves, and where it is like that, well, they're gonna judge me because I'm not perfect. And that's the whole point. We're not perfect, and so we point them to Jesus and take ourselves out of the equation. It's not about me. It's not about whether or not I perfectly line up with everything that I say. It's not about whether or not I look good or have lots of friends or whatever, but it's just about here's Jesus, and Jesus is awesome. So come hang out with him. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. And so I'm glad you brought up the bread, because one of the questions we had was, why do you think people don't smell the goodness of the bread, which is Jesus, in the church? So kind of, just to explain, we talk about that the church is the table. Jesus is the bread, John 6, where he says, I'm the bread of life. And the smell of the bread is what entices people to the table, but the taste of the bread is what connects people to the table. And so why do we think people don't smell the bread of Jesus, the goodness of the bread in the church?
I honestly think that TJ hit it on the head. I think that there is a false narrative that Christians are perfect. And when they're not, it's like, oh, but I thought you were a Christian. And so there's this perception that, I have to be a certain way when I'm a Christian. And yes, there is a certain way you should live, but it's almost like, you have to live sinless. And those that are watching from the outside don't want to live a sinless life, but they don't realize that's not really what it is. So I think that prevents, I think we need to rewrite the narrative of what it means to be a Christian and allow people to understand what the reality is and really defy the myths that have existed for so long.
Oh, good. Anybody else? Anybody else have thoughts on that? What's preventing people from smelling the bread in the church?
I think that Christians have been known for things that we don't want to be known for in in our past, and that's like pretty much fully on us. I think a lot of the ways that we've treated people and just things that are in our history that aren't super great. So I think like kind of like rewriting the script, like Joy was saying, but also just like changing the way that we live to show others what it really looks like to follow Jesus. That it's not just it's like laying down our lives for each other, and finding people who are the least of these in our society and caring about them. I think that people see that and are like, interesting. I've never really seen someone care so much about someone who is so on the outskirts. I'm interested in that good news, I think. I think because there's nothing more beautiful. Like, people always love those feel-good stories. And so then a lot of times if you're doing those things in your life, it's going to lead to conversations like, hey, why are you doing that? Because that's hard. And then that leads to a conversation that can lead you to inviting someone to be in that chair. So
Yeah, that's a great point. And I believe, and then this sounds so cliche because you can say it at any time, but I believe now more than ever is a great opportunity to invite people. Like, there's so much going on. We don't have to go through the list. Everybody is well aware, of what's been happening this crazy 2020. And, I think that this has been a great time where people are looking for something, right? They're looking for something to connect to more than ever. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to, to give them that, to just, hey, I guess come smell the bread, you know what I mean? And that's been challenging because of what's going on. It's like, even for us, it's like, I had that, me and Joy talked about this. It's like, we're sitting there talking about this table series and inviting people to the table. However, we have limited capacity and we're kind of restricted on who we can, who we can invite. And then I had to break out of my own box of, it's not about who's in the room, right? I mean, even if we invite them to just watch online, we're at least giving them that invitation. Go ahead.
So then, since you brought that up, and since you brought up Facebook, so then is Facebook the new way to invite people to the table, given the times?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, or anybody else that wants to answer.
Well, I would say it's definitely a method. I mean, if we hadn't learned anything through this season, is that digital and social ministry is a great opportunity to reach people, right? It's a great opportunity, a great front door. Let me say that way, like a great front door. That it's the most non-threatening front door probably that's ever existed. And so I think that it definitely has the ability to do that. I think we have to be careful because there's kind of this balance of, on one hand, we definitely, social media and digital media is something that can be used to be a huge blessing and reach people, but it's also something that's being used to hurt people at the same time. And so I think we have to kind of balance that as well. But I think that it's a great door, and I think there's other doors. I think there's other doors. I mean, anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking as you were talking about, we have like a limited number of seats in this room, but we have an unlimited number of seats to watch. We have an unlimited number of seats. Well, I don't know actually if we have an unlimited, but more than we could have on Zoom for our small groups. Like we have many more places that you can connect. You put as many contacts in your phone as you want and call them throughout the week. So there's all kinds of ways to connect, even if it's and invite someone into your life and the life of the church, even if it's not specifically like being in this building on a Sunday morning.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that's the box. We've got to step out of the box, right? When it comes to inviting. And, I think that's what we've been doing here on Sunday, where we tell people just to share it, right? I mean, like that's a easy entry point to inviting people, right? If you can like, you know what, maybe you can't have the conversation with the person, but look, you just hit the share button. If one person one person's blessed by what they see, then you've had that impact. You've done, and then that should give you the courage to begin to do more and more. But I think there's, and even in the house, I mean, look, if we need to, we just add services. You know what I mean? But there's still capacity at some point. We can't be here all day. I guess we could. But I think that it's just about the mindset of whatever it takes to reach the lost, right? And I think that's, I guess, for me, I think that's kind of the heart that as Christians we've got to have, like, whatever it takes. Like if I know there's somebody lost around me, potentially lost around me, whatever it takes for me to connect, maybe I'm just the inviter, maybe I'm just the one that's praying for them, like it doesn't, and like TJ mentioned earlier, you don't have to do it all, and it's not about you, right? Maybe it's just praying for them to find Jesus, maybe you're not the one that does the inviting. Speaking more on that, I mean, TJ, week 2 with the message on the filling the empty chair. I mean, he really talked a lot about this, and we talked about why inviting others is uncomfortable and difficult. Anybody have an experience or something they want to share of a time that was really uncomfortable, but they did invite somebody? Like it was just one of those weird moments, and you're like.
I think it's always weird.
You don't ever go out and be like, "Oh, Jesus is with me today. The Holy Spirit is moving me, and I'm ready to go tackle them." And
but that
bring
doesn't
them
mean
all.
that it's not weird, because nobody likes rejection, and you don't know how people are going to receive it. So you're like, I really feel compelled to invite this person to church, and it's kind of awkward, but I'm just going to go for it. I mean, like somebody said in the chat, we're already at no. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? They say no. Well, we're already there, so
Right.
they're already not coming.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. You were gonna say something?
Was the question like pertaining like inviting them like to the table or just to have a relationship with Jesus before I continue? Oh, either or. I actually had one at work about 2 weeks ago. A friend of mine had gotten into an encounter with, I guess, a highly conservative individual, and so she proceeded to ask me all these questions about the faith. And I told her, look, I don't have a theology degree. I'm not qualified to answer these kind of questions. And so she literally had me on the ropes with, her questions and, well, what, and the church this, and I mean, you can just imagine. And so a customer pulled me away, and in that time I was like, okay, we got to have something when we go back. And so I went back to her, and I was like, look, the world has spent so much time trying to disprove the presence of God. And like I told you before, I don't have a theology degree. I don't have all the information. I was like, what I can tell you, I was like, you know what? Try it for yourself. That's the only thing I can tell you at this point. I was like, you've got all these arguments, all this opposition. I was like, I can't contend with that. I was like, but try it for yourself. There's a scripture that says, taste and see for yourself that the Lord is good. And that's pretty much what I told her. And I was just like, you got to try it for yourself. I was like, you can listen to everybody else's experience, this, that, or whatever. But until you see for yourself what it's like to have a relationship with God, you will never know. And so you can listen to all the opinions you want. You can Google search. I mean, there's so many opinions out there, but no opinion is going to supersede your own personal experience with God. And that's kind of how I finished. And I don't know if that was like an scapegoat for me. Like, look, we got to stop this conversation because I don't know. I was like, but this is what I can tell you. Just try it for yourself. Just try them for yourself.
But I mean, that's great. I mean, because that's what we're talking about the table. And I mean, again, Jesus is the bread. The table is the church. Just like your favorite restaurant, you're basically telling people, hey, go try it for yourself. It's good. I promise you, if you go, right? I gave it like 5 stars. stars. It's great on Yelp. Everything. Hey, just go and taste for yourself. And if you really think about it, that's all he's really asking us to do. Anybody else had a crazy like invite encounter? Carter looks like she has one, but she's like, I don't know if I should tell that one.
I think I honestly have felt for a long time that inviting people to church is taboo. So I honestly don't know the last time I've invited somebody actually to church. But I like to invite people to my house for dinner. But the first time that you do that, especially with someone you don't know that well, is always incredibly awkward. So we did have one time where we invited our neighbors and we were eating sloppy joes and no one talked at dinner, and I was like trying to make conversation awkwardly. And so, but now we're like really great friends, so it ends up being fine. but yeah, it's definitely an awkward first move.
Yep.
So.
Yep. I remember, let's go back almost 4 years ago, right after the last election, presidential election. It was during the time where we were going out on like I can't remember, I think it was the fourth Saturday or the first Saturday, and we were like designating places that we wanted to go to just invite people. So that particular Saturday, it was the first Saturday of November, we were like, okay, we're just going to go to the square, and whoever's there, we're just going to invite the church and talk to people and stuff like that. And so if you remember, literally right after election, that's when all the women marches all over the country like kicked off and sparked. And so when we got to the square, there were hundreds of people there. So at first we were like, oh, cool. And then we're like, oh, man. Right? Right? And I mean, they were everywhere. You could hear people with loud horns. I mean, they were basically marching around the square. And so we were like, okay, well, we're just going to go and, connect with these people. And I remember as I was going through, it was a couple different encounters, but one particular, I just, told the person who I was, the church, and I mean, they just basically went off on me. They were just like, you know what, the church, all you church people, you hate homosexuals, you hate, and just going down the litany. The problem was I really couldn't argue with them because across the street was a whole group of Christians who were out there like yelling and spewing out hate towards those who were on the square that were homosexual and all of that. And so I said, well, first of all, I'm not with them. I don't know those people. I don't know nothing about those people. So I'm not with them. And I said, and basically I said, I get where you're coming from. And you're right. There are some that do that. But that's not who I am. That's not what our church is about. Our church is about, loving God and loving people. No matter who you are, no matter what your background, no matter what your walk of life, wherever you are, God loves you and he wants to have a relationship with you. And so that was one of many strange encounters like that. Ultimately, they didn't come because most of the people who were on the square that day didn't live anywhere around here. They were like from McKinney, Prosper, like they were from Dallas, they were from all over the place. But it's just the reality of, sometimes what we get faced with, So anybody else with a...
Oh, no, you go. I don't have a story. I just had something to kind of add on to that, but you can go.
Okay. Well, I'll just say this was a while ago, but I do remember when I was in seminary, we occasionally would go just like around to the couple miles around seminary and try to have conversations with people. And I like knocked on this one guy's door and was just like, hey, basically like, I'd love to talk to you about Jesus and kind of what he's done in my life. And he was like, well, actually, we're Hindu. And I was like, oh, that's great. Can you tell me about that? And he was just like, no, and then shut the door on me. So that was like probably one of the worst experiences I've had, where it was just like total rejection, totally shut down. But I think that happens, and it was just, prayed for him and, moved on, went to the next, and actually, right after that, I had a good conversation with someone. So I think that's just how it is sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And then you took me back because I remember when I was younger, the city that my dad's church was kind of in rural, it was in Kaufman County, right? So it was out kind of rural, kind of the country. But every year they would have what they call like a city-wide revival, right? So it was like all the churches would come together, have one big revival. Well, as a part of that, like every church was designated like a week or days or a day that they would go out into the community and basically do evangelism, like old school knocking on doors and and witnessing and stuff like that. And I remember being young and going like doing that, and I was terrified because first of all, it was not the nicest part of town. First of all, and I didn't grow up in I grew up in a bad part of town, right? But just like people slamming doors in people's face, people like yelling and saying not so many, so nice words to you, and then every now and then you'd have a good conversation. But I'm like, just thinking about it, you made me think about that, like just that old school, like just knocking on doors. Like how many of us really would do that today?
Yeah.
Well, just not today.
Right. Well, you're right. Yeah, it's a little difficult today. Just a couple things. Some people chimed in. I think it was to our question about, why do people don't smell the goodness. Stephanie said their group discussion, they discussed how women of her age and experience need younger women at the table. Right? They need to be able to connect with younger women. And there are a lot of Christians out there acting crazy, and it hurts us all. And I'm a Jesus follower displaying his righteousness. And that's the unfortunate truth is that everybody doesn't have the same agenda that says that they're a Christian. And that's the unfortunate thing. And Cheryl said if they have one negative experience or see or hear something negative about someone in the church, causes them to not think there is goodness. And then that is so true. And in this era of social media and everything's instantaneous, things hit the internet quick. And so you hear about this pastor, that pastor, this church, that church. And it's like, it really affects the witness for us all. So just kind of moving on. This is a good question. What made this? The question was really around kind of coming to the table, joining God's party. What made you want to join God's party? Like, first of all, how old were you when you accepted Christ, and then what was that made you say, hey, I want to be a Jesus follower, Christian, King's kid, whatever you want to tag with it.
I didn't want to go to hell. That
That's a good reason.
at 11 years old, it was at the end of a Bible study, and this guy was very black and white about what it was like. And I remember at the end of it, he described hell for us, and he described heaven, and I was like, I don't think I want to go to hell. I think I'm gonna get on this Jesus boat. And so that's what drew me in. Granted, like I said, I was 11, and he was pretty crass about it. A relationship with God, relationship not with God equals hell, heat, and melting. Well, all right. I'm sold on this Jesus thing. But that was just my early experience with it. That was my first experience with it.
Yeah, that's cool. What about everybody else?
Yeah, I think it's kind of in stages, right? Because when you're a kid, I remember when I was 5 and I was at church and they were did a similar kind of thing, and they're like, Jesus can live in your heart, and I thought that he was literally going to live in my heart, and I'm not going to go to hell, so just but I remember when following Jesus really clicked for me. It was in middle school, and I was a super perfectionist and a super chameleon, where I would be one way to one person, one way to another person, because I wanted everybody to like me all the time. And it just didn't work, middle school, people don't always like you.
I remember that story at the lunch table.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you get rejected and you can't make everybody happy all the time. And so I was in a small group, and they were just talking about like how Jesus loves us unconditionally, and talked about Romans 5:8, which is God demonstrates his love for us in that while we were still sinners, he died for us. And that was for me what drew it, was the idea that like when I was at my most unlovable, God loved me. And I think that is just incredible. And so that's what it was for me. Yeah.
Cool. That's good.
I think I was born in the church, but I agree with TJ. It kind of goes in stages. So I kind of just didn't have a choice, but all of my friends were in church. And then I realized as I got older that if I stopped praying or stopped going to church, my life just went awry. And I was like, this is probably not good. I need to get back on, in church and in relationship with Christ, because anything apart from that is not good for me. And so I think it was really more just life experience.
Cool. Carly?
I was 10. Mine's just that I remember feeling very strongly that I needed forgiveness, and that I was really thankful for Jesus' sacrifice. And then I asked my mom to help me follow him, and I did. I remember feeling, I do remember feeling like a burden was lifted from me in that moment. But I also remember feeling kind of confused, still, because I was like 10. So, I had a similar experience where in 6th grade I went to a conference and felt led to recommit my life. And then from then on, I was very serious about my faith pretty much from 6th grade on. So, for me, when I read the Gospels, still even today, when I read Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, I get so excited that I'm on Jesus' team, because I love the way that he treats people, and I love his I just love how loving he is. And so I always go back. I always tell people when I read the Bible, I read one book of the Bible and then I go back to a gospel, and then I go read another book of the Bible and I go back to the gospel, because it's just, for me, it's life-giving to remember who he is and who he was when he was here. So
Cool. Great stories. And I think I shared mine, I don't know, a few weeks ago. I can't remember what Sunday that was, but kind of like Joe, I was born in the church. Literally to a certain extent. So, preacher's kid. All I ever knew was church from when I could remember. I was the kid coming home at 3 years old from night service and running my room and trying to preach a message about, Moses taking the children of Israel across the Red Sea. That was like my thing. But it wasn't until 9 that I really accepted Jesus Christ. And I told this story, sitting in church, and I thought it was my dad calling, and it was God. It was my dad calling, right? And so that was really like the opening of the door to salvation. And then I guess kind of as everybody's kind of mentioned, throughout life, at different moments, it was a new level of awareness and understanding about what relationship. Because I feel like it's kind of like when you first say you both agree that okay, we want to date. It's like okay, I like you, you like me. Let's go out. And then it's like after that, it's like, oh, okay, now we need to get to know each other, right? And there's different stages of that. And what I think Stephanie, she posted about after living 40 years of life her way, and then that's when she gave her life to Christ. Stephanie has an amazing story. She needs to go speak and share that with women all over the world. She really does, because just her life experiences, God's transformation in her life is truly amazing. So if anybody else has that, Sheena, you're gonna have to probably yell it out to me, unfortunately, because my phone just died. So
I got you. I got you back.
You got me? Okay. All right.
Your wingman got you over here.
Cool. So We still got about 15 minutes. Thank you guys again for being on. Again, I hope this is blessing you. And really the goal, like we've been talking about with this series, is about making us reflect on where we are, kind of having the hard conversations about faith even today, and drawing people into Christ. This past week, we talked about being family. And we talked about what it means, how do we belong to the family? What does it mean to belong? And then what's the expectations of belonging? One question is, what would you say to someone who wanted to belong, but has been hurt by someone at the table, like by someone in the church? What would you say? It's like they want to be a part of the family, but they've been hurt by somebody already in the family.
I'm going to tell them that hurt people hurt people.
You articulated that so much better than I was going to say it.
Well,
That's just because she's a church planner wife, and those things are plastered everywhere. It's like that's in the church planner 101 manual.
You just sold me out. Like, who's secret you on
sorry,
here?
sorry.
I thought she came up with that.
Sorry. What's your version?
I'm going to refine it right now. I don't know. I feel like that's always been an interesting part of being in the church, is that, we are a family of, broken people mended together by Christ's unconditional love. But at the same time, it's almost like we get in here, even as individuals, and we try to remove the human aspect of being a Christian. And it's like, okay, we're all in here, we're all believers, so there's no way anybody in here is going to say anything or do anything that'll hurt me. And, to have that unrealistic expectation, I think is what is what gets people off course when there are offenses committed. It's like, just because even for you, people might come to you and, well, can you believe that the pastor said or did this, or TJ said or did that? And and I'm just speaking from my experience, like how I've had these conversations with no. I'm just saying, like, conversations I've had with myself, like someone were come to say to me, it's like, oh, TJ did this. And I just be like, well, last I checked, TJ was made of flesh and bones too. I mean, he's probably having a bad day. Well, I just don't accept that. I mean, you could go talk to him about it, and you guys could, probably try to, work towards forgiveness on that. But I guess because I look at, some of the things that I've done throughout my life while being a Christian, and, and have hurt people or probably turned people away from it. And it's like, so I guess when those situations come up, I look at myself and I'm like, well, my resume is not all that great either. But, I do still try to make those steps forward, I guess, if that makes sense. Like you said, we are still broken. We're all just in here trying to find that redemption. And unfortunately, that's not going to come until the new heaven arrives. So that's going to be a daily thing, sometimes a moment by moment thing. And so to the person who says, what if I've been hurt by somebody? So haven't you hurt people before in your life that you wish, don't you have moments in your life you wish you could take back? So we, even as individuals, have to work towards, one, forgiving others, and also extending them the same grace that God extends to us in those situations. And we have to remember that none of us are right, and we won't be right until the last day. So,
but even in biological blood families, there's still hurt. You don't disown your family.
Sometimes.
Well, thanks, Damari. But, when it's your family, you do have a tendency to want to work through it. So to me, this is really no different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the question isn't like whether or not you're going to get hurt.
Yeah, that's true.
It's how you're going to work through it with the people that you're coming together with. And so I think I would tell them that, well, I think it's always good to start by saying that you're sorry. I'm sorry that Christians have treated you that way. I remember being on a plane one time. I always end up getting in conversations with people on planes, which is like everyone's worst nightmare. But I somehow
that's mine.
But always about Jesus. I don't know
admit it.
where
That's mine. I'm like, oh, please don't talk to me. I just want to go to sleep.
Pastor,
I'm just saying.
It's really his fault because the people ask me like what I do. I'm like, well, I do this, and my husband's a pastor, and then they're like, Okay, let me ask you about that. I'm like, okay, well,
Well, TJ's over there asleep.
yeah, then I have to handle the hard stuff. So, but I did have a conversation with this woman on a plane one time who was really angry with the way that she was treated, and I just said sorry on behalf of the church, and that like kind of paved the way for a better conversation. But I do think like addressing that nobody's perfect. At the same time, though, holding high standards for people who are within the church, I don't think that we should like say, well, nobody's perfect, and so like we can kind of act however we want. I think that Christians can use that kind of as a cop out to treat people wrongly. So yeah, I think still like holding people to a high standard, but also being willing to reconcile and come back together, forgive each other.
Yeah, I agree with the holding the high standard, and I think that, you know, what I would say too is sometimes we do people a disservice in the church in that we kind of sometimes present this, you know, unicorn and rainbow kind of Christianity, meaning like, oh, once you get saved, everything's gonna be great and exciting, and life is gonna be, and right, everything's gonna be, you know, awesome, and we never sometimes really come and balance that with the realistic perspective of, you know, this, again, flesh and blood. In this life, you know, Jesus said there's going to be trouble, there's going to be suffering, there's going to be, you know, and I think because of that, people sometimes come in and they sit in the new believer seat and they're like, I'm excited to be here, I'm happy to be here, give me bread, I want more bread, and then something happens and they're like, whoa, like,
I'm not coming back to dinner.
Right? Yeah, I'm done. Like if this is what it's going to be, I might as well just stay out there. And so I think we got to balance it as well. And then I think that when it comes to hurt, I agree with just apologizing. Like I wasn't that person. I didn't do that. But you know what? I'm sorry that you've experienced that. And then maybe even ask the question to kind of shape people, refocus people. I get that people have hurt you, but has Jesus hurt you?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like, you know, I want you to connect to Jesus. He'll never hurt you. He'll never let you down. God's never going to fail you. People, even those that love Jesus, yeah, we're going to mess up. All right? But he never will. It's important for you to connect to him. That first and foremost. And I think sometimes we got to refocus people away from each other to recentering him on, you know, what Hebrews says, fix your eyes on him, right? Because we look at each other, man, yeah, we're going to mess up.
Yeah.
You're going to make me mad tomorrow, literally. No, I'm just kidding. We're gonna do stuff intentionally sometimes and unintentionally most of the time. And that's, you know, unfortunately, that's what families do, you know. So anybody else on that? All right. Well,
I got nothing.
Let's see. Got a couple more questions. How can you help others grow in their faith? How do you think? What can we do to help other people grow? How can we help people move from like the new believer chair to beginning that process of maturing in faith? Besides sending them the PV. Or TJ, because that's always the cop out. Like, oh, you need to go talk to PV.
You need to talk to PV.
You need to go talk to the pastor.
Yeah, I just think helping people navigate through the word with whatever their situation is. And I think one of the things that I love the best is the realness of Christ, and how when you pray for things, they literally will come to fruition. Sometimes as you imagine, sometimes not, but there's always an answer. And sometime in those moments, it's a wow moment, because you know that that's what you prayed about, and only God could have done whatever it is in your life. And so it really is something that people should experience for themselves. And I think if you are walking alongside somebody and encouraging them and praying for them when different outcomes arise in their situation, then they will begin to see for themselves and begin to build a stronger relationship independent. But I think you do need to walk alongside people.
Oh, that's good. Anybody?
Yeah, I think that relationship is really important. There's the verse that says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." And I think that's really what it's about. It's two people coming together to try to follow Jesus together, and that doesn't even mean that you like need to be farther along in your walk than them. That you can just be like, let's do this together. I'm trying to pray more. I'm trying to not sleep in and come to and not skip the stream. I'm trying to whatever. Do you want to do that with me? And then just like that communication about what's going on in your walk and encouraging them in their walk. And I think like modeling it, trying to say like, I want to be in a group. Do you want to come get in a group with me, or whatever that is? Just trying to have that relationship, to have open communication, and to be honest about where you are. And I think that will help push others to come closer too.
We have a couple of comments. Stephanie said, just be available. And Denny said, it's by your actions. Yeah, let your actions be your light and your example for other people.
I would like to use it's an analogy or kind of a system that I've used for mentoring that was given to me, but I think it's the same thing as far as mentoring as it relates to our spiritual walk. It kind of talks about, and it actually is more spiritual now that I think about it, because it's almost a cross, right? Is that is you have you, and the question is who's ahead of you that can pour back into your life and pull you, help you to advance forward. Who's behind you that you're pouring into and helping to bring along, and then who's beside you that you're walking with, right? And that's actually a little cross. Look at that. I never thought about it like that, right?
You better say it.
But I think that is probably the question that no matter where we are in our faith, at the table, no matter what seat we're sitting in, like that's what we need to be thinking about, because that has so much to do with our own growth. Because if you don't have anybody pouring into you, well, you're definitely not going to grow. If you're not pouring into anyone, you've cut your growth out there. And if you don't have anybody that's walking alongside you're not growing there. You need all of those in order to grow in your own walk. And so you need to be finding who's that person or people. I don't mean just the people to hang out with and talk about football or what's hot on Amazon or
the latest Baudelaire exhibit.
I mean that's cool. You can talk about all of that stuff, but somebody that's going to pray with you, somebody that's going to get in the Word with you at every level, because we've got to have that in order to stay strong. I know for myself, when I don't have one or more of those people, then that's when I struggle, because now I'm trying to keep myself engaged and connected, and all the distractions are pulling me away, and I don't have somebody saying, hey, get it together, or somebody that's expecting me to have it together, or somebody that's like, hey man, I got you, so I think there's anybody else on that. How can we help people grow?
I was just going to add to that sometimes it can be intimidating to think about like being a mentor to somebody, or even because a lot of times when you want somebody who's ahead of you to walk with you, you probably are going to have to ask them to walk with you. It's not a lot. Most people are not going to like approach you and be like, hello, would you like to be mentored by me? So I think just being mindful that you may need to do the work to get there, because I think I have fall into the trap of being like, well, no one's mentoring me. And but I haven't asked anyone to mentor me. So I think just being willing to put in that work is important for your growth and for the growth of others.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I don't know what our time check. Oh, it's 7:59. Anything else to wrap up before we finish tonight? Any final thoughts from anybody? Just on the topic of being at the table. How did it feel to be at the table?
It felt more natural. I stuttered when I said that, so it probably did sound right. I like this format.
I just kind of wish there was some food.
Right, I know, right? Right. It is
Next
a little.
time. We have some bread. Well,
No. I threw the bread away because the bread was a little starting to.
I was wondering,
Yeah.
because I came up here
After-
last
after-
week, and I was like,
After
bread is still here.
After a few weeks, so we've got to replace the bread. but know this: the bread of life, which is Jesus, it never goes sour.
Hallelujah.
It never molds. It always is fresh in your life. So know this. Thank you guys for being with us tonight. Thank you guys for joining around the table tonight and giving your perspective and input. Look, just if you still have comments, questions, go ahead and still put them in, and then we'll still connect with you. Don't forget, actually, a couple things. One, if you want to attend our service live, we love to have you. Just go ahead and reserve your seat on our website, crosschurchden.org. Reserve your seat so we can have a place for you. If not, you can obviously still watch online from our Facebook page or our YouTube page as well. The other thing, don't forget, if you are coming live, because we fall back over the weekend. So
extra hours.
so if you don't fall back, you're gonna
Get to
miss
stay
church.
up even later.
Right, you're gonna so make sure to adjust those clocks, because we would hate for you to show up on Sunday and there be nobody here. No, you're falling back, so you're wait, we're gaining. No,
Yeah, you're gaining an
We're
hour.
Yeah, we're gaining an hour.
but we're going- I get what you're saying.
yeah,
So
yeah,
the
right,
correlation
right.
is-
We're gaining, yeah.
confused.
I know. I always get it mixed up.
We
I
lose
was-
an hour, but we gain an hour of sleep, and that's what
gotcha.
throws everybody.
right.
They'll be here just in time for trunk or treat.
Right, they'll be here just in
Yes.
time for trunk or treat. And
Come
that-
to trunk or treat. If you have kids who didn't have enough candy, which is all of them,
Or you
should-
didn't have enough
or you
candy.
didn't have
Oh
enough
my
candy,
or they didn't get
we
the right
want,
candy.
we want you to be here after service for trunk or treat. It's going to be really fun.
Awesome. So again, thank you guys. Keep checking all of our platforms for additional information, announcements, and things that are coming up. And we love you guys. And if you need anything, you know where to find me. And so we look forward to seeing you on Sunday, connecting with you on Sunday during our worship experience. Have a great night and a great rest of your week.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.